Welcome to the NOSA Unleashed podcast, where we want to expose and remove the stigma surrounding mental health by discussing real-life challenges and obstacles that keep us paralyzed and fearful to move forward. Let us inspire you to believe there is more to life than what you are currently experiencing. Now is the time to end the silence and pursue the path to purpose and fulfillment. We will do this together because no one stands alone. Welcome back to the NOSA Unleashed podcast. I'm Laura Burgoyne, joined here with my sister Connie Blackwood. And today we want to talk about rejection. And, I think that there's actually two kinds of rejection that we're going to cover today. And one is actual rejection, where people legitimately, reject us. And what does that feel like, and what do we do about that? Because it does happen. It's real. And I don't think we can, just sweep it under the carpet and pretend it doesn't exist, because it does. It's real and we need to address it. But then there is another kind of rejection, and I believe that is perceived, right? We look through life through particular lenses, often rooted in our past, our experiences, those in our life, sometimes our traumas, and those can really impact the way we see people and relationships. And so welcome, Connie, to the conversation.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. And I find this topic really interesting because, I wrote a book basically about this. So this is kind of my jam. So not that rejection should be my jam, but you know what I mean. Dealing with it. And so for me, like, I'm glad we're talking about this today, because I think it's something that not we don't always think about, right? It happens on a regular basis, but we don't actually think about it a lot. And we carry the offense or the hurt from being rejected. And a lot of times we don't even recognize where that came from. We're just offended or hurt. And we know that this person did something, but we don't know why. And a lot of times it's because we've gotten this sense of rejection from them. And I like how you differentiated between perceived and real, because perceived rejection is as painful and as offensive, but a lot of times it's not the intention of the person who's done it. Yeah, a lot of times it's just they hadn't had a clue that they came across that way at all. For example, you're trying to start a conversation with somebody, they turn around and have a different conversation with somebody else, and you feel slighted. You feel like, okay, they rejected you, they don't want to talk to you, they have no desire to even communicate with you at all. And so you go off and you like are hurt and offended that they did that to you as you were trying to start a conversation. 9 times out of 10, that person didn't see you coming or hear you when you started talking. And the only way to find that out is to not assume that that was what they were intending to do and to talk to them about it, right? That's the only way you can find out, is to clarify those situations.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, then you're left with your assumption, and it may not even be true, right? That's the only way to find out if it's real rejection or not, is to clarify these situations. So you go up to the person later and say, I tried to talk to you earlier and you turned around and talked to somebody else. And 9 times out of 10, they'll be like, oh, I so didn't see you there, I'm so sorry, right? And they're apologetic and they're sincere. And then you'll have the odd time where they actually did see you coming and purposely turned around to talk to somebody else. And they're usually a bit awkward because they don't want to hurt your feelings. So they'll be like, yeah, I'm sorry. I guess I did do that, right? Like, they'll kind of be awkward about it because they don't want to hurt your feelings, but you're gonna know the difference between sincerity and non-sincerity. And there you'll know whether they actually rejected you or they didn't. And then you can make decisions of what to do from there. But a lot of times we perceive things. I'll send a text out expecting a response. And if I don't get a response, then I'm like, okay, this person doesn't care. Well, in reality, anything could have happened. They might not even gotten my text, for all I know.
Right.
Technology is not reliable. My mom called me to tell me that I had to go pick her up, and I was in the parking lot, and I didn't get her phone call. She texted me 5 minutes later because I didn't respond to her phone call. And I'm like, you should have just texted me right away, because it didn't even show on my phone and it showed on hers. Technology is not infallible.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I even have had, and I've done this too when it comes to technology. Um, people have texted me, and then I go to text them back, and sometimes I forget to press send,
Mm-hmm.
or other times, I finish half the message and then I get pulled away to something else, and then I forget to come back to that. And I've had where, people have messaged me later, sometimes a day or two later, and saying, "Did you get my message?" Because I didn't reply. And does that mean I don't care about that person? Absolutely not. But that's often how we feel, right? In those circumstances, it can honestly make us feel rejected. Um, I know I have. I can completely relate with that. And so I think it's important that we recognize the difference, be able to perceive what is true rejection and what is just perceived rejection, right? And be able, and sometimes even in that example that I just gave, sometimes I have to like talk myself off the ledge. No, Laura, they care about you. They're just busy. If you want to know, you reach out to them again and you send them another text, right? And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes their reply is, "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I completely dropped the ball on this." Yes, you know. So instead of just sitting there and wondering and then having like so many different thoughts coming in your mind and then it growing into something much bigger, like let's mature and be willing to like communicate about these things, right?
Nip it in
It's
the
it's
bud.
not it's not always about us, right? And another thought or a saying that just came to mind is, a lot of times we judge others.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we even judge ourselves. But I remember this saying. It says, "Don't judge me on my best day or my worst day," right? The reality is somewhere in the middle, right? And we have to realize that sometimes people are going to have off days. And I've even had people come to me and say, you know, "Laura, you did this and this is how it made me feel." And I'll be like, "Are you, is that honestly how you felt? Because I had no idea I even did that in the first place." Right. And so perceived rejection, like you said, Connie, it's real. It feels the same,
Mm-hmm.
but it's important that we recognize that it exists because a lot of times I think we walk through this life feeling the feelings of rejection when we don't have to be,
Mm-hmm. I
right?
agree.
And I think we really need to be aware of this and bring more attention to it because I think we suffer a lot more than we need to, right?
And a lot of times it's because we've built our assumptions on it, right? So instead of making assumptions, we need to investigate, right? So if you see yourself assuming things about other people, realize, wait a minute, this is an assumption. I need to investigate and see if this is true. Because we base our assumptions on judgments. Like you said, we judge other people, we judge the world around us, and we determine what the world says to us. When in reality, it may be completely different. And so we need to actually investigate to find out what the other person is thinking, what the other person's heart is. And as we investigate, we're going to realize who is truly rejecting us and who isn't. And if you're being truly rejected, being okay with that. That's the other
Hmm.
piece, right? Okay, if somebody's really rejected me, I have to recognize that it's either something about me or it's something about them. And if it's something about me that I can change, then that's my job, right? But if it's not, then I have to be okay with letting that go and just let it go and be okay. Because then it's between them and God. It has nothing to do with me anymore,
Yeah.
right? And so recognizing that actually makes it easier for me to let it go. Because if I think that it's because I'm not good enough, or I'm not a good enough friend, or I'm not whatever, and I blame myself for every single rejection that ever happens to me, then I'm putting myself in a place where I'm never going to be confident in who I am. I'm not even going to know who I am after a while, because I
Yeah.
think I'm this person that's so horrible. Nobody wants to be my friend, when that's not reality. And so I think it's important that we recognize that there are going to be people who reject us because we've triggered them in some way. We've said or done something that's triggered something in them, and they don't want to face that. They don't want to deal with it. So they push us away. Or maybe we've said or done something that just doesn't resonate with them or doesn't line up with who they are. And it's just really awkward and uncomfortable. And so then they're rejecting you because you just don't click. You just don't have anything in common. You're just on two different wavelengths. And that's okay too. You don't have to be friends with every single person in the world, right? And that's okay. And
Yeah.
find people who do click. Find people who do resonate. Why do we chase after people who don't fit with us? But we do this. We line ourselves up for pain and for hurt when we don't have to, right? There's so many people out there that will resonate with you. There's so many people out there that want a friend just like you. But if you block
Yeah.
yourself off from it because you've been rejected so many times in the past, you're never going to find those people, and they're never going to find you. And that's unfortunate, because they need you and you need them.
Yeah. I think sometimes too, people might reject you at first, and then they might get to know you or know of you and actually come back at a later time and actually cultivate a friendship. I remember this one lady in my life. I didn't know this till much, much later after we had already become friends. But I may have shared this on the podcast before, but she came to me one day and she said, "You know what, Laura? When I first met you," she said, "I didn't like you." She said, "You put off the airs that you were, you know, better than everyone else and all of these things." And I realized, because I'm a very independent person, I'm very confident, and, I have a really strong sense of identity and a really strong sense of purpose. And I didn't realize what perspective that was giving her, right? And she felt insecure, like she felt like she couldn't measure up to me. And my perspective of myself is like, I am the most welcoming, genuine, kind person. And, I open my heart up to, anyone really. And so when she told me that that was her perception of me, I was like, what? Are you kidding me? But, somewhere down the road, she and I became friends, and we're still friends to this day. But, you never know, like that first impression or that first meeting, or, maybe at first you don't jive, right? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
at first you have nothing in common, right? There's nothing to draw you together to want to be in a relationship. But then somewhere down the road, you actually find that commonality. You find that piece that connects you somehow, right?
I even had that with a friend in my life too. When we first met, like we had very little in common. We went to the same church, and we had at one point lived in BC, but even different parts of BC. And then like I still open to her though, and I still wanted to like have her in my peripheral, but we weren't close. And then one day she approached us, me and my husband, about having lunch or having dinner with her and her husband. And I was like, sure, why not? you know, I'm willing to give this a shot, even though we don't have much in common. And throughout that dinner, we realized that I am like her husband, and my husband is like her. And all of a sudden, I had this deeper understanding of who she was because I understand my husband very well. And all of a sudden, because of that, we connected like gangbusters. And now we're really close friends. And that would have never happened had we not had that dinner where we recognized what it is we actually did have in common. Right. And that was the fact that she is a lot like my husband and I'm a lot like hers. So we can relate to each other because all of a sudden she knows to talk to me the same way, like in a similar way as she would talk to her husband. And I have that kind of perspective on things. And it's just really interesting. And I would have never known that had we stayed in the same place we were.
Right. That's so true.
So, yeah, there's so many levels of like things that you miss if you let rejection pull you into a place of isolation, right? And that's exactly
Mhm.
what it can do because rejection is one of the roots for loneliness, right? And isolation. And because if we get rejected, then, well, we don't want to put ourselves in a place where it can be rejected again. So you start pushing people away. But when you do that, you may be eliminating the chance for rejection, but you're also eliminating the chance for people to truly love you for who you are.
Yeah.
And then the other piece that I think is important is we as people need to know who we are and be confident at who we are when we're meeting people. Because if we're not, then we're going to crumble if we get rejected. But if people reject us and we know who we are and we're confident in who we are and they still reject us, a lot of times it will be like water off a duck's back because we're like, that's okay. I know who I am. And there are people out there that are going to love me for me and I'm good. And you just keep going and it's not a big deal. But sometimes when it's shattering, I think it's because we're not strong in our identity and we don't know who we are because I know there was times in my life where a rejection was so shattering. I was like crushed. And it's because I didn't know who I was and I definitely
Yeah.
wasn't confident. And so that is the key piece in being able to be resilient when it comes to rejection is knowing who you are and allowing yourself to be confident in that person, even if it's not the person that those people want to hang out with. It's okay.
Yeah, because we all have our people, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to connect with everyone. But when the rejection happens, I think it's important that we don't take offense,
Mm-hmm.
right? I am not going to fit with everyone, right? And just because someone doesn't want to connect with me doesn't mean there's something wrong with me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to not almost not take it personally, right? And, one thing that helps me recognize is like in a situation, well, have I done something offensive? Am I a rude person? Have I done anything in this situation to merit rejection? And if my answer to that is no, then this has nothing to do with me. And to just be like, I'm not going to take this personally for whatever reason. They don't like me. They don't want to be in a relationship with me. And like you said, water off a duck's back, move on, right? Walk in forgiveness, walk in, humility and just be like, okay, they weren't my jam. Like you said, Connie, they're not my jam. So I'm just going to go out there and find my kindred spirits, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's people like you said, you meet them and you're just like, this is my kind of person, right? And I think if those moments happen and we do take them personally, we do feel like, almost shameful, like there's something wrong with me. That's where rejection can take root. That's
Mm-hmm.
where it can become not just a thought, but like a mindset, something that solidifies itself and becomes foundational in our belief about who we are is that I am not lovable.
Mm-hmm.
I am rejected. Like I am not, good enough to be in these people's lives. And I think that's a dangerous place to go. And if those are the kind of thoughts you're having, it's time for you to address those things and time for you to um, really seek a greater sense of your identity and purpose. And like you said, Connie, identity is a really big piece to overcoming rejection. If you know who you are and someone doesn't care for you the way that you deserve to be cared for, it's okay to not have that person in your life, and recognize that not all people are meant to be in your life forever, right? Relationships come and relationships go. And maybe that person was only meant to be in your life for a season.
Yeah, for sure. Because let's face it, we all have things that happen. Sometimes we get relocated due to jobs, or sometimes we have to move for family, or, things in life happen, or sometimes people change and
Yeah,
they change dramatically. Like, when my dad died, I changed. I admit it. I'm not the same person I was before my dad died. I'm not.
right.
And that's okay. And the thing is, those who are close to me are still close to me because they've seen the change and they still like me. Great. Awesome. Because I haven't changed that much, but I've changed inside quite a bit. And, there is a piece that's missing, but that's okay. It's just the new normal now, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
If this is an area that you, as a listener, are struggling in, I want you to feel like you can reach out to us.
Hmm.
That's really the whole mission behind No One Stands Alone Foundation, is that you don't journey alone. And if this is something where you hear what we're saying and you recognize that this is something you're struggling with and you just don't know how to process it on your own, you know, come to our website and book an appointment with one of our mentors, and we'll walk with you. We'll journey with you. We'll help you to identify those deeper roots, why you can't, overcome in these areas, and offer you support, offer
Hmm.
you, it's just some insight in regards to your own journey that maybe you can't see because you're too deep into it, right? And another resource we have coming up next month, um, the first week in March, the first Thursday in March, is our next webinar called Loneliness and Rejection. And we'll be talking about these topics a lot more. And so you're welcome to join us live on Zoom. And you can register for that also on our website. And you would get the details to the Zoom group there. So Connie, any last comments before we finish for today?
Yes. God will never leave you or forsake you. He will never reject you. So remember that if you're in the middle of feeling completely rejected by the entire world, God's
Mm,
still there and you can reach out to him anytime. And he can start putting you on the path to restoration of that. And the second thing I wanted to say is another resource that you can use as well is my book, Unlovable. And if you want to get a copy, you can always contact us at NOSA Foundation and we'll get you a copy of that if you'd like. And they're $20. So yeah, we'll we can get that to you if you need that resource as well.
awesome. Thank you, Connie, for joining me today. And we look forward for you to join us next time on the NOSA Unleashed podcast. Bye.
Bye.